Welcome back, everyone. I decided to play a relatively chill spot today. Decided to go air on Supreme Isthmus, something I used to play often long back when I was settling into the game. However, I started feeling that air players tend to not have a very big impact on the way the game goes. So this time around, I thought I'll do something and have a very impactful air player role. You can see on both the teams, so I'm 32 OS, but the rest of the team is fairly lackluster. However, on the enemy side, we do have a solid stack on the high OS side. And I'm aware of the way Fated Duelist plays. Funnily enough, we will find him on the front position. But Fated Duelist, a very, very strong commander when he's playing C. He has some super cool tricks up his sleeve, so something to be aware of if you find him in one of your matches. Now, there was a little bit of coordination with my C players early on. So, if now as air player, your C players will almost always want a scout and a transport. So they both requested scouts and transports, and they've both gone for heavy transports. So the starting play that I went for is the three mexes into a little bit of wind. Wind was doing horribly in the beginning, which, while is the worst thing that can happen to any other position, if wind is bad for you as an air player, I would say just double down on wind, because air is a very energy intensive lab. So each of these units you can see require tons of energy, which is not the case for your bots or your vehicles. Now we will switch to player view. We did have a leak over here and I did spot it out early on, but I've got shop commitments to go for. So I've given a heavy transport over here. I've given a light scout. The moment I see a tick, I immediately queue up 3 shuriken, skipping my queue. And the reason for that is I do see leaks happening. So one thing that has become very obvious for me as the air player is that there's the red player on the front lines. And given that 2 of our weakest players are on the front from our side, we will be in trouble very quickly if the pond and the geo position don't end up supporting. And looking at my team, I don't think that's going to be happening. So I pulled out 3 shuriken just to support front. And I go back to the heavy transport, the scout that the C players need. I've got 2 fighters over here just to counter any scouting attempts. So if there is an air scout out, you do want a fighter to just counter that. I send both the fighters, or at least the one fighter. So I'm sending the fighter onto the island position, and the reason for that is I hadn't spotted the yellow commander yet. So I'm trying to counter Fated Duelist from getting access to the island via an air transport. Now the shuriken up front almost gets a centurion. The second one comes in. So you've paralyzed the centurion, which is a very sturdy unit on the front lines, and the meta is sort of evolving towards centurion's front early on. Now my scout, the second scout comes in. I get to see, alright, Fated Duelist is front, and that's going to be a big problem. I also scout out the enemy C player, and I realize, okay, they probably are not going to be going for any transport plays to the island, and I do not need to send more fighters to the island position. Bose, on the other hand, flies his commander out to his island, so I'm sending a squadron of fighter aircraft to support him in case there's any plays made on his commander. And getting your commander shot down in a transport is one of the worst ways to lose your commander, and I don't want Bose to go through that. But I am in trouble on the front lines. I do know for a fact that the red and the yellow players on the front lines means that they can very easily push into us. Now, a little bit of an inefficient play over here. I've gone for an air constructor to build my final remaining mechs. Could have very easily just paid for a T1 con early on. Maybe somewhere along the lines I forgot about it. So we have yet to spot any fair amount of air from the enemy team. I am flying out my fighters out just to see if we can catch something from the enemy air. Doesn't seem likely. The second C position has also flown his commander out to the island. So both the Cs are going to be doing well because they have gotten that access to the island. And because of that, I start switching into shuriken. So my first 3 died, and I've pulled out 3 more shuriken just to counter plays like this. So I'm calling out that we need to kill those, because getting your shuriken up front without having any ground units to kill the units that you do end up paralyzing just means that you will lose your shuriken in a short while. Now, because the enemy air hasn't been doing much, I know that this can be an easy victory. So you can already see my queue. I have 8 more fighters, and then I'm just pulling out tons of bombers. But to pull these bombers out, we will need tons of energy. So to get that energy up, we're building a con turret. We will have both our commander and the construction aircraft. You can already see the queues. We want to build up tons of wind so that we can support the bombers that we do want to pull out. Now, we held off the offensive over here, and you see how much impact shuriken are having, right? We stopped the front offensive. We are now moving down to where our navy has been under attack. While we had killed most of the units, it always helps to paralyze enemy units. Now, this is precisely why you do not want to go into Armada Air at T1, because Armada Air does not have shuriken. The Armada Air has T1 gunships, and they're fairly bad. They will not be able to kill units in any meaningful sense. T1 ground units tend to just walk it off. Whereas with your EMP shuriken, you can almost always be certain that you can EMP a very significant amount of metal. Like these 3 shuriken cost 174 metal, and they can very easily EMP destroyers, frigates, even missile ships if you're quick about it. You can EMP those despite the fact that they have anti-aircraft. It's very easy to again EMP your maces, your thugs, rocket bots. So the offensive has stalled out, and you can see Martin Plo sort of recognizes that, and he's building up a gauntlet, which gives me some confidence when I do spot it out, because I know he wants to slowly creep up with static defenses, and that's giving me time to just build up a solid bomber squadron out here. So my commander building up a couple of converters just to catch that excess energy. And we're building up more con turrets because bombers are again very heavy on build power. You can see they require 5,000 plus build power to push out in any meaningful sense. Bose, the green commander, has done a very heads up play. He's walked up onto the C position, so he's going to be a menace to the enemy GOC, which is always a good thing. And he's also supporting the front, so that's tremendous plays over here. Lots of C players tend to forget at the lower OS levels that I'm playing at. Now you can see the enemy has lots of Centurions. Centurions super heavy on metal, so that was 270 metal for 1 Centurion. Really good as anti-swarm. Really good at sniping commanders as well. But yeah, not for much longer. You're heading into that early T2 territory. Again, our Geo player seriously lagging behind on that, and maybe we won't even need to wait for early T2 because you've got T1 bombers. So again, you can see the moment I start pulling bombers out, I'm running super low on energy, even though I've got 1 con and 1 commander just building more and more wind. It's really difficult to sustain an early bomber squad. To build those out, you really need to have tons of extra energy, and one of the ways you can do that is always borrowing the geothermal. May not be from the geo position, probably from the C position, just for a few seconds, and you can quickly pull your bombers out and then give it back to the kind player who gives you your geothermal. But this is something that becomes really concerning for me, and I should be moving my bombers out, which is the fact that you've got tons of Centurions moving forward. Because once you have these Centurions, they've got tons of HP, not as much as T2 tanks, T1 tanks, and on that front, the pawn position has been doing a wonderful job. So the pawn has recognized that a front is falling, and he's just pushing out T1 tanks, even though he has very low metal income by the virtue of being the pawn position. But all those tanks helping push back, repelling the front offensive that the enemy has been going for. And meanwhile, we already have 11 bombers out. So I recognize 11 bombers is a fair amount of bombers. I'm just pulling out some more fighter aircraft to support them, and my bombers are moving out. I I should also have some scout aircraft. There has been a very recent change, so you can see how bombers have very little ground vision in this. Uh, I believe the recent most change is that bombers do get a fair amount of vision, not as much as a scout, but they get enough vision so that they can bomb the units they do see. Right now, this is a game which is a week old, I believe. So the bomber can't really spot the units on the ground on its own. I have my two scouts moving forward. I've set the pattern where I want to bomb. My fighter aircraft are on the front to get rid of the enemy air. I believe the enemy sea has given up. OP take by the red player. So the red player is gonna have tons of economy, and if we drag that offensive out, it's gonna be a problem. Raptor Claws has gone for a very heads up play yet again. He's gone into the enemy base. He is destroying a fair amount of eco. But this is what I wanted to show you. So I've gone for a fighter offensive followed by a bombing. These fighters will go push into the enemy aircraft and always fight command your fighters. So the moment they spot something, they redirect themselves and kill those aircraft. And all my bombers are just gonna go into the enemy geo. I do believe we should get, yeah. Now whenever the geo does pop, it will take out your bombers. And because the initial bunch of bombers got through, so I'm just gonna re-queue them to get more of enemy eco. Which I do not, honestly. Yeah, I thought I got more of the enemy eco than I really did. So, well, as long as we're able to bomb some of the enemy eco, that in itself is something that works. So yeah, we lost all our bombers except for that one on the front, which still doing God's work, getting more of the enemy air. And that itself sets the enemy pretty far back. So you can see that we get a massive eco advantage because we killed the enemy geo, we've killed the enemy front, we've taken out a few wind turbines over here, we've taken out a few wind turbines over here. And that means that the yellow player does not have enough energy to even produce metal for himself. And again, the design vote has been called. This is the sort of early bombing run that people tend to really prefer higher up. You might even have the geo player supporting your bombing run, going for T1 bombers of his own. You will see a lot of that in high level play, and it just pays to be aware of these things sort of happening and, you know, scouting them out, especially if you're the air player. The reason we were able to pull this off is primarily because the enemy air did not scout us. The enemy did not have a lot of radar coverage. So the sea did have some radars, but by the time my bombs are over here, it's a bit too late. And the enemy air was not scouting a lot, or if he was, his scouts were getting killed off. So he did not know what are we planning on our side, and hence could not really counter it. I'm just gonna speed this up because the enemy's been dealt a supreme morale blow, if I may. And because of that, we do know that they will slowly start crumbling. So just because there is no geo, they're unable to hold back on this T2 push. And meanwhile, I have just gone back into scaling up. In fact, I'm not even helping my front lines. So the brown player is building gunships, and I've been really late to send out T1 fighters just to counter them. And you can sort of sleep on the job when you absolutely knock out one or two enemy players. And yep, the resign votes get called, and yep, that's GG. So hope you learned something, hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope I will see you around. Take care.